Your world is waiting, but first you have to access it. Welcome to the Joshua Roy Show. We don't do fluff, we do freedom. Real talk on mindset, cutting-edge coaching techniques, and the hidden frameworks for lasting change. If you're ready to move from being stuck to becoming the architect of your life, you're ready for this. Hit subscribe. Let's get to work.
To do something that I felt was more worthwhile. And that's why there was a transition there, away from law enforcement and towards, one of these topics is health, and the health of the mind, the health of the body. So let's talk about health. Let's talk about, firstly, the words of health, and then we'll go into talk about, how can we incorporate these into my world and into my life? So for each of you, you're here for a number of different reasons. Ultimately, you're here because something in your life isn't working. There's an area of your life that's not going well, not going as it should. We've had, Matthew talk about chronic fatigue. We've had Vanessa here talk about another issue as far as, how do you get to sleep? It could actually be the same issue or something very similar. But how do you get to sleep and then stay asleep? How do you slow the mind down? And so the health of the body and the health of the mind, both crucially important. There's 4 words I think of when it comes to health. Now, these are simple concepts. You might want to write these down. The first word that you want to think about when it comes to all the health that you would desire, either have or desire, is energy. Think of health as energy. Have you got energy to live your life? Have you got energy to get up and run and jump and do whatever you need to do? I'm a grandfather now. My daughter, Leah, had a little daughter about 4 years ago. She's pregnant again. And so I'm a grandfather, and I'll be a grandfather for the second time. And I want energy like I had when I was a father. And if I can have that sort of energy with my grandchild, I can still run, I can still do what I need to do. I can run around with my grandchild. In fact, I went on a boat cruise not that long ago. I've been on probably 3 boat cruises in the last, 6 months. And one of these cruises, my wife was having a sleep during the day. She was having a lie down. So I decided to go out and do something physical. And so I went out the back of the ship, and it was raining slightly, and they had a slide there. And I thought to myself, I could do some exercise here. So I decided to run up the stairs, and I slid down a couple of times, and then one of the attendants there said, stop running. They didn't want me to set a bad example or hurt myself or set a bad example for other children that was there. So I started walking in a power walk way. So I'm power walking up these stairs, down the slide. I ended up going down the slide 20 times. And it wasn't because the slide was fun, although it wasn't a bad slide. It was an enjoyable thing. But more to the point, the idea was that I wanted the exercise. I wanted to make sure that my heart rate went up. I wanted to make sure that I had energy. And during my 20 slides, there was a couple of times where some children were there joining me. And I ended up chatting with the children just a little bit and asking them a little bit. And I said, do your fathers do this? What about your grandfather? Because I told them that I was a grandfather, and I was wanting to keep my energy up. And they were a bit shocked, and they reported that no, their fathers and their grandfathers don't do that activity. And so in a way, I think about what we do and how we think as we age, as we grow up, so to speak. And sometimes we lose some of that childlike fun. And that's just one of my stories, but I was talking to another family, and they have this child that's got sleep problems. This child won't go to sleep. And the father has learned that the son has a certain amount of energy in his body. And if they don't use that energy up, then the child won't go to sleep, can't go to sleep, can't wind down at night, probably ADHD or something along those lines. And so it's a matter of using that energy up. How do we use that energy up? Now, Matthew's got a different problem. Matthew doesn't have the energy. Where do you get that energy from? What do I do if the energy is not there? Well, what I'd like to talk about as we finish these 4 words of health is then talk about energy and where it comes from. So the first word is energy. So health is energy. That's what I want you to think of, number one. That if you've got health, you've got energy to do what you want. And there's also the winding down and the enabling one to rest and be calm. Because what we don't want to do is be in, a high thinking state where we can't wind down. If you're too excited when you go into bed, you're not going to sleep because the body and the mind are, they're cycling through what you've done during the day. Maybe you're planning about the day tomorrow. You can't stop thinking. It's hard to settle down. So the second word after energy is mobility. Because what we want through life is we want the ability to have mobility. We want to ensure that we can run, we can jump, we can do the activities physically. We don't want to be confined to a wheelchair, confined to a chair. Inability to move and enjoy our life there. So movement and motion. And we want to make sure that we're getting the right foods in our body that give us those things. Energy and mobility. The third, and also the right activities. The third is longevity. And this is the third, and look, these are just words that I think of when I think of health. The third one is longevity. How long are you going to live for? And is that length of time going to be quality life? So longevity is number three. And the fourth one is diet. So the fourth word I think of is what foods am I consuming? What am I putting into my body? And are the foods going to promote good health? So many years ago, there was two concepts that health professionals took on. And these are the two G's, you could say, the two theories of health. And the first one was the germ theory, and the second one was the gene theory. And so people look at their situation, and quite often you'll look at your health, and I've just had a friend who has had a heart attack. And it just so happened that at 53, 53, his father had a heart attack. At age 53, his brother had a heart attack. And so he turned 53, and guess what happened? He had a heart attack. Now, you might look at that and say, well, it's obvious, Josh, that's in his genes. And the genetics, the genetic code in this person's body suggests that at the age of 53, it's time to have a heart attack, which is what's happening now for the last couple of generations. So that might just be a way that a person thinks that if I've got a problem, I can't sleep at night. If I've got a problem, chronic fatigue, if I've got a problem or an issue, it's in my genes. And you might want to think, well, it's easy to think that there's nothing you can do about that. And so if you think about your genes, I'm 6 foot tall, I've got blue eyes. Now, nothing that I do is going to change those facts. My height, my eye color, nothing I do is going to change that because my body uses whatever fuel I put in my system to create, the skin color that I am, the eye color that I am, the hair color that I am. That's what happens. Well, the hair might get a little bit gray, but that's beside the point. So the idea is the body has a genetic code, and the genes are what determine what happens in life. And so it's really quite easy to think that, well, your genes determine whether you're going to be sick, whether you're going to be healthy. It's in the genes. Now, the germ theory says this, that if a person gets sick, that it's because there's a bug. There's something that's entered your system which brings with some parasite, some germ. Somebody coughed and I breathed it in. And suddenly now there's a transference of these bugs and they're now in my system, and that's why I'm becoming sick. So you've got the gene theory and you've got the germ theory. And these were the two theories that scientists have grappled with, you could say, throughout their life, trying to work out, well, what's causing disease? And this is why we put on masks during COVID. This is why we change the way we do things. We modify activities when we're unwell in case we cough on somebody, in case. Now, here's the problem with those two theories, because neither of those theories you could say is 100% correct. So you might say, well, it's the germs that cause disease, but why is Sick Steve always sick? Why is healthy Harry always healthy? You know, you might have sick Steve and healthy Harry. Now, sick Steve, anybody that sneezes around Steve passes it on. Anybody who sneezes around Harry, well, Harry's immune system is to such a degree that he doesn't get sick. And I'm sure you know people like that. Some people that get sick easily and some people that don't get sick at all. Now, you might have a look at that and think, well, it's in their genes. Well, here's the truth about genes. That genetics loads the gun. This is actually true. Genetics does load the gun. But let's be clear, it's actually lifestyle that pulls the trigger. It's a lifestyle that allows us to, you could say, fall into the trap of attracting the disease or sickness of our parents. And I'll give you an example of this. There's a woman, she's now in her late 60s. She's about 70 years, close to 70 years of age. Now, her mother died at age 50 with rheumatoid arthritis. There has also been other family members who have died in her family and in her extended family from rheumatoid arthritis. So it might be very easy to think, well, it's a genetic thing. And she actually buys that. She actually believes that it is genetic. However, years ago, she decided that she would live a more alkaline diet, that she would eat more fruit and vegetables. She actually became a vegetarian, this woman. And by doing that, by changing the way she ate, the activities of her body, the way she moved, she has been able to escape that debilitating disease. She doesn't have rheumatoid arthritis, and she's been able to escape that. Now, how did she do that? Well, she realized that genetics loaded the gun, but I don't have to live my life in such a way that I would attract that disease or that sickness into my body. And so she chose a different course, a different behavior, a different attitude around health, and she made different food choices. And because of that, she's been able to escape that. So when I think of health, it's those 4 words. Let's go over them just briefly. Again, it's energy, it's mobility, it's longevity, and it's diet. Those 4 words are crucial if you're going to live your healthiest or best life. So really start thinking about the necessity, the need for you to fuel your body correctly. So there's a statement that I heard from a naturopath, and this I love. This naturopath simply said this. She said, if given the right conditions, the body will heal itself. Now, there's a little word in that, and it's the most important word in this whole sentence. And it's that little 2-letter word called if. If you give your body the right conditions, the body will heal itself. And so I don't care what you're dealing with. I don't care what you're suffering. I don't care what you're going through right now. I mean, I do care, as the compassionate part of me cares about that. But what I'm suggesting here is inherent in that statement is this idea that if you discover the right building blocks for your cells and you put the right conditions into your body, then your body can and will heal itself. Now, you might want to know, well, how does that work? Let's talk about this. Let's talk about how this works. We all have cells in our body, and the fundamental building block of every human being is the cells. We have eye cells, we have liver cells, we have skin cells, we have stomach cells, a stomach lining. We have cells all the way through our body. We have no bone cells. So think about your body as a collection of cells. So here is a little diagram. It's just a circle there, but let's just imagine that's a cell. And what happens is a cell needs 4 things for optimal health. The first thing that every cell needs is it needs oxygen. And thank goodness we're breathing. And what I do in my course and program is I take people through breathing exercises to help people to expand their lung capacity. What we've discovered in life and throughout life is that people lose lung capacity as they age. The average person has lost 40% lung capacity by age 50. The average person has lost 60% lung capacity by age 70. Now, that's alarming. And if oxygen is reduced to the cell, then less energy is produced within the cell. Does that make sense? So oxygen is a vital substance that your cell needs for optimal health. The next thing your cell needs is water. And we've known that doctors and scientists and others and other health professionals have pushed this idea of drinking clean water. So you want clean air, good air, and you want water. And the experts tell us that if we're drinking about 8 glasses of water a day, that's great for optimal health. What you want is somewhere around about 1.5 to 2 litres of water every day. So there's 2 substances that the cell needs for health. The third thing that the cell needs is nutrition. And the fourth thing that the cell needs is it needs the ability to eliminate its own waste. So if you can give a cell those 4 things at a high level, you are going to have a cell that produces energy. Energy that you can use throughout your day, energy that you can use in your life. Energy that's going to promote vitality and going to promote longevity and hopefully even mobility as you use the energy. Because here's the secret about energy. If you don't use it, you can lose it. It really is that simple. The way you get more energy is through, and here's what I've discovered, is the HIIT training protocol. What does HIIT stand for? High intensity interval training. When you explosively use your energy, what happens is the cells of your body, the system, creates more energy. So let's have a look at the workings of the cell now. We'll get down into the nitty-gritty and we'll get a bit more scientific for you here. So the first thing that happens is the nutrients and the water create a pathway. So what happens is you've got glucose, and that's actually what the cells need, and you've probably heard about that, that sugar they call a natural part of life, and it is, so long it's bound up in the fiber of your fruits and your vegetables from nature, as God intended. One of the challenges that we have in life is that people are eating sugar, but they're eating the pure crystallized sugar that comes from the sugar beet or the sugar cane. They're using processed sugar. And what happens is that as we eat cakes and as we eat different breads and as we eat different foods, they have been processed and sugar has been artificially inserted into those products, those food products. And so a lot of people now have sugar addictions. So think of sugar as pure crystallized acid that's been extracted from the sugarcane or sugar beet plant. So that's your sugar, and that's a problem. What we do need, though, is we do need some glucose, and you get all the glucose you need out of your fruits and vegetables. And the beautiful thing about it is because it's bound up with the fiber acts as a slow release agent to the system so that your pancreas doesn't wear out. One of the problems we have around sugar and processed food is that the pancreas of many people is becoming weakened, and the pancreas will get to the point where it finally stops working. And when a pancreas stops working, stops functioning the way that it should, that person has now become a diabetic. So a diabetic is someone whose pancreas doesn't work correctly. It doesn't produce and release insulin into the body. And so a person now may need to take an artificial substance. They may need a pen or something. They may need something external to regulate their blood sugar levels because their body has given up and is no longer doing that. Does that make sense? Just drop yes in the comments if that makes sense. That's understanding how the pancreas works. All right, so in understanding that, how the pancreas works, we realize that we do need glucose, but what we want to do is get it in from a natural source. and that is from your fruits and vegetables. That is from actual food that's created and grown either out of the ground or off a tree. One of the biggest problems that we have in the world today is all of the artificial food that's been created. We need to eat living food, and ideally food that grows on a tree, food out of the ground. Now, if you're going to eat other foods, they're going to be acid forming in the body, which means that you have to work out how to neutralize that acid with alkaline-based food. The most alkaline types of food are your deep green leafy vegetables. Any deep green food can actually serve to reduce the amount of toxins and acid buildup in your body. Because let's face it, all disease, including cancer, lives in an acidic environment. And so if you've got an acid environment or a toxic environment in your body, then your chances of growing disease or sickness increases. If we can turn your body into a more alkaline system, then what can happen is the reduction or the elimination of all disease. In fact, as Dr. Otto Warburg, who won a Nobel Prize many years ago for his discoveries around health, he said this, he said, no disease, including cancer, can live in an alkaline environment. They did tests, they put cancer cells in an acidic or a toxic environment, and they proliferated and grew. They took those same cells and put them into an alkaline environment, and those cells died. The life went out of them. They could not live, they could not exist. And this is why different people have had their battles with cancer. I'm just using cancer as an example here, but some people have battled with cancer and they've realized that there's a few things that help. One is the physiological things, the change to the diet. They needed to eat differently, more clean living foods. They wanted to get onto an alkaline creating diet rather than an acid forming diet. And once they made that change, those cancer cells were starved. They couldn't survive. Now, the other things that they did, people exercised faith. Some people prayed. Some people meditated. What people did as well was they wanted to maintain positivity with their life rather than have that defeatist attitude. And quite often, doctors in the world today, if they see somebody's got a disease or a sickness, they actually, without really knowing it, give people a death sentence. And what do I mean by that? Well, when a doctor tells a person, an expert says to a person, you have 6 months, you have 12 months, you have 2 years to live, a person's mind, both consciously and unconsciously, can take that on, can believe it to the fact and to the extent where that person can actually decline health-wise. If you think about it, the placebo effect is real. People have taken sugar pills that an expert has told them was going to heal them, and they've gotten well. People have also taken pills that they've been told are good for them, and they haven't. They haven't responded to the treatment. They haven't responded to what's going on. People in a community, in the tribes of old, have had a bone pointed at them. A witch doctor might have come up to a person, pointed a bone at them, and that person goes away. That person who's healthy, that person who's mentally fit and tough, has gone away and died. And so realize this, that your mind is very powerful. And so too is the body, and so too is the building blocks of the body. And so we go back to that idea before, which is it? The germ theory? Is it the gene theory? Well, I want you to think about both the germs and the genes. And the other thing is that germs don't create disease. What they do is they take advantage of a weakened immune system. And so if you're dealing with something, and Hippocrates said that all disease starts in the gut. So any disease, whatever you've got, it's all started in your gut. All right, so we've gone full circle, but let's come back to this cell. So let's have a look at the cell. So what happens is the glucose comes in through the cell wall into the cell. Now, the only time that doesn't happen when a person has insulin resistance, that cell can't take in the nutrients that it needs. And so now you've got a bigger problem. We won't go into that today, but there's other issues around that. In a healthy person, here's what's supposed to happen. The nutrients come into the cell, And the first thing that happens is there's an 8-step pathway. And in that 8-step pathway, we have water and the glucose mixing together to produce 2 units of energy. And that's wonderful. That's energy that we need in our body. But here's what happens next. Oxygen comes into the cell. So here we've got nutrients and water. Water and nutrients going into the cell, essential. Over here, we've got oxygen. Oxygen comes into the cell, mixes with those 2 units of energy. Now, what happens is the cell creates a form of energy which is called pyruvate. That's a technical name, scientific name for it. So what happens is oxygen mixes with that pyruvate. It then goes through another process. And at the end of that process, it then pumps out 32 units of energy. So can you see how important oxygen is here in this whole process? So we've gone from 2 units of energy from the water and the nutrients, 2 units of energy, and then that's turned into a whopping 32 units of energy under the action of oxygen. And that's how important it is for you to oxygenate your body. That's how important breathing is. Breathing, breath work. I teach people diaphragmic breathing, deep breathing practices. Why? Because we want energy in your body. And so if you're finding trouble with fatigue, you're finding you don't have energy, what's happening is it's somewhere in the cell, we've got a challenge, we've got a problem. Now, it could be that because of insulin resistance, the proper nutrients aren't getting in. That could be the case. It could also be that the oxygen levels of your body are low, and so therefore the oxygen isn't producing the energy that you need and require to live a good life. Now, does that make sense? Just drop yes in the comments if that makes sense. And this is how important oxygen is. I've just spent the last 2 weeks teaching a whole bunch of oxygen training exercise to people, bringing in things like yoga practice, bringing in other breathing techniques from different places, so that my clients and those people who are in my group, there's a group of people that have joined what I call the Ultimate Success Series, and health is one of those areas that we look at. And we look at it deeply, and it's not just about, understanding the body, it's about applying what we understand to our body so that we get all of the health that we desire. We get everything that we need in life. Now, if that makes sense, then what I'm suggesting for you, and this will help each and every one of you here, that if you want more energy in your life, then you've got to make sure that this pathway is working. You've got to make sure that this cell production is working. So there's a 4th thing the cells need. I said there was 4 things. I've mentioned 3 here. We've got water, we've got nutrients, we've got oxygen. Now with the nutrients, we mostly just say glucose. We need glucose. We need that substance. Okay, most of all. And that's why a lot of people say, I need sugar. It gives me a pick-me-up. It gives me 5 minutes of energy. Now, the trouble is the sugar is overdone. You don't need any excess sugar beyond what you get naturally occurring in food. Just realize that we are having, as a society, way too much sugar. Back in the 1960s and before, there was no diabetes. There may have been diabetes, but it was very rare. Very uncommon for somebody to get diabetes and become a diabetic. Whereas in today's world, they're looking at 1 in 4 is a diabetic. Potentially, we're heading towards 1 in 2. Why? It's because our diet has changed. It's because the mass production of food and food choices. They want to give us variety, and food has become heavily processed. It's become laced with these poisons, and one poison is sugar. It's a poison. It's actually not a food, and it's not a natural part of life because of the extraction process that has taken the sugar out of the plant that it was designed to be in. And so if you're going to get sugar or have any sugar in your diet, the best way to do it is through your fruit, through your vegetables. And if you do have a little bit of sugar, maybe once a week, your body's going to cope and going to deal with that. But it's when we start having dessert every day. It's when we start having sugary drinks every day. It's when we start having chocolate bars every day. That's when the pancreas begins working overtime. And our bodies are designed to heal themselves, and the body will cope for a period of time until it won't. Until the pancreas has said, I've had enough. There's too many emergencies, too many crises, too much insulin production, too much insulin release. I can't keep doing this. And the pancreas will pack it in. It's like an overworked employee. It just gets sick of it. Sick and tired of being sick and tired of working so hard. And so, look, I've covered a lot here today. I've covered understanding about the pancreas. I've covered understanding about the cell and energy. And just realize that this 32 units of energy, it doesn't use it immediately. It actually stores it in a little grape-like structure that's contained in every cell. And in this little grape-like structure, these little, grape-like round capsules contain that energy. And so if you wake up in the morning and let's say you want to go for a run and you haven't eaten anything, maybe you haven't drunk anything, and just take off for a run, well, your body can do that because it's got all of these energy components here. It's because of the build-up from this process, and that's what normal, healthy, high-functioning cells that work do, is they store energy ready to open it and use it. And that's why we can do those things. Now, if you're suffering chronic fatigue, you want to be looking at your oxygen level. Am I breathing right? Have I got breathing exercise? You want to be looking at the cell wall. Is the cell wall letting it through? Am I insulin resistant? Have I got other problems there? Am I eating the right nutritions? Am I getting enough water? So water, nutrients, oxygen, and also ensuring that your body can eliminate its own waste. And that's where the lymphatic system comes in. I won't go into too much detail there, but that gives you the idea. All right, does that make sense? Just drop yes in the comments if that's made sense to you, if you've got something out of that. And if that's of interest to you, there is a seminar that I've got coming up. It's a 2-day seminar all about health. What you've got here today, this is a basic introductory level understanding that I've given you. In the course that I run, I talk about how to heal the body. Not just healing the body through diet, but healing the body through mindset training. Healing the body through the mind, because the mind has a very powerful way of healing the body. And even if there are deficiencies in some of our nutrients, with the right mindset, you can create a more alkaline environment and create healing for yourself. And I've seen this happen time and time again. I've been, like I said, coaching for about 12 years now. And over that period of time, I've seen people change with that. And so there's a mindset component to health. When it comes to health, there's an exercise component, and there's also a diet component. And so I used to think when I was a young person, actually going back years ago, I noticed when I was in my 30s that my stomach was getting bigger, and I'd look down and I'd think, I need to exercise and work out more. And so I'd go like a madman and I'd do my push-ups and I'd do my running, a bit of bike riding, whatever else. I'd do the activity that would create health. And that kind of worked to an extent, but I used to eat anything I wanted to eat. I didn't even think about the food I was eating. And then as I've aged, as I've gotten older, I've realized that the food that I eat really matters. That if I'm not eating fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, if I'm not eating food from a tree or from a ground, then what am I getting? I'm getting a processed, substandard version of this thing we call food. We're not eating real food. We eat fake food. We eat plastic food. We eat processed food. And so learning and understanding that, when I did understand that and realize that health is about mindset, it's about diet second, and it's about exercise third. I had it the wrong way around. I was exercising like a madman. I thought that was health. was just exercise. I didn't worry about what I ate, so that was probably third. Maybe diet was number 2. And now I've readjusted it to the correct order, which I believe is number 1, mindset. And so in the course that I do, it's a 2-day seminar, we'll be talking about mindset and mindset training. The second part of the seminar, we'll be talking about diet. There are foods, and think of foods as a healing tools. Think of, well, there's foods that's going to give me this energy that I want. There are foods that when I take them in, they're going to provide for me the energy that I need. Now, when it comes to sleep, a person whose mind is overactive, well, you got to think about this. Why is it overactive? What am I doing to create this situation? There's more children today diagnosed with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, than ever before in human history. And you've got to start asking why. Well, in the 1970s, there was a shift. 1980s, the shift became more apparent. 1990s, these shifts were happening. And here's what happened. And I'll go back and tell you just a quick story about history, is that processed food started becoming more regular. This idea of being able to feed the masses. There was a hybridization period where they started to splice different chemicals from different substances to try to alleviate the starvation issues around the world. One such hybridization took place in wheat, and the structure of wheat has been changed, and the wheat that we eat in all of our breads and our cereals and all of our pastas is different to the wheat that people used to eat 100 years ago. We eat different wheat today, and it's been hybridized. The soybean has been changed and hybridized. Different foods have been scientifically, in a laboratory, modified to create more yield for farmers, but less nutritional value for consumers. The world we live in today, in fact, there's one book that suggests that the food that we eat, much of the fruit and vegetables that we eat, only has about 1/4 of the nutritional value that it did 50 years ago. And so we're eating foods today that are starved of the nutrients that our body needs to produce healthy, high-functioning cells that work at an optimal level. And so where you can, and I've been instructed this, I'm probably not the best example of this, where we can, if we go organic, then we're going to get much more of those minerals that we need for that optimal health that I'm talking about. So, I mean, we can buy stuff from the supermarket, but the trouble is because the ground and the soil has been reused and overused, it doesn't provide us with what it is that we need. So in the program, let's talk about what's going to happen. So it's a 2-day course, 2-day program, all about your health. We're going to talk about your health so far as longevity. How do we make sure that you live not just a long life, but a healthy life? We're going to talk about energy. And I'm going to further explain this scenario, and it'll be a reinforcement of what I've said today, but then we also go beyond that. And I'll talk about how the lymphatic system all works together, how the lungs work. We'll do some breathing exercises together. I actually work to help you to get a foundation of health in your life so that change becomes more easily. More importantly, we work on mindset. We want you to change your attitude around health. We want you to change your beliefs around health. We want you to get this desire and this excitement around creating that energy in your body. And that all comes about through the course. Knowledge is power. But knowledge isn't power. Knowledge is potential power. Knowledge is information applied. So therefore, in that statement, knowledge becomes power because you're applying the information. So, I mean, I've shared with you a lot of things today. You'll pick up some of these ideas. You may use a little bit of it. And if you do, and as you do, you will get benefit. What I'm suggesting is if you want change, if you're serious about your health, if you're sick of being sick and tired, if you're wanting to lift yourself out of this place that you've got yourself into, somehow you're in this place and you want to change that, then I would really suggest and I'd recommend come along to the 2-day seminar and workshop. It's going to be life-changing and life-altering. So there is a workshop coming up. Now, normally for these workshops that I do, I charge $2,000. And that's simply because of the level of understanding that you walk away with. You walk away with knowledge about how your cells function. You'll walk away with mindset tools. You'll walk away with healing tools, the ability to rapidly reduce pain in your body and to promote healing in your body. If the mind is racing, you'll find ways to calm the mind through breath work, bring your mind back into the present. All anxiety and depression exist because a person is consciously and unconsciously ruminating about the past and consciously and unconsciously catastrophizing about their future. And these two conditions, the catastrophizing and the rumination, these are normal human functions. If you do them, don't think you're abnormal. That's actually normal. What happens is they can become out of control when they're overdone. You see, the survival mind, if the survival mind is in charge, then you'll find yourself being unable to sleep. You'll find yourself going all through the night, not knowing what to do. If you can take control of that, you can take control of your life, your sleep habits, and anything else you want to change. It is all, I can't think of the word. Everything in life is able to be changed and altered. But it really does come back to that one thing, mindset. And that's why I teach mindset is number one. But diet, so essential. You got to get the right nutrition. You got to get the oxygen. And we can do practices that create this, so long as you're willing to invest in yourself. So here's what I did after that seminar that went for 4 days. And I told you earlier, I was actually able to drop 12 kilos. I don't know how many pounds that is, but quite a lot, maybe up to 20 pounds. Of weight in a short period of time. The way that I was able to do that was I started doing a morning routine. And this morning routine went for a couple of hours. I looked at things like posture, oxygenating my body. I did HIIT training, high intensity interval training. I did a breathing exercise. I did meditation for my mindset. I did my planning. I did goal setting. I reinforced my goals every day. I went over these principles, the foundation of empowerment principles. I went over all of these principles every day. So it was almost like I was living a mini seminar in my head every single morning. And what happened was the weight just started falling off. My mindset improved. I started transitioning away from a career that I, in some ways, felt stuck. Welcome back, and I hope you learned something great, something you're going to take out to improve the quality of your life. Now, this has been Joshua Roy. I'm your happiness and fulfillment coach. I'm a results coach helping you to take more control of your mind, your thoughts, your actions, your behaviors, and your life. If you haven't already, make sure you follow, make sure you subscribe so that you can get all of the new exciting content that is delivered through this and other platforms.